Hello and welcome to this Ramp Interactive website tutorial video. The following session will include quick setup instructions for your new Ramp Interactive website. If you have additional questions about the system setup and how to use tools, please refer to dedicated tutorials for that feature, or reach out to support@rampinteractive.com, as this session will focus primarily on quick setup and the primary tools you need to access to get your site off the ground. Before we can get to the process of setting up your website, you have to get signed in to your system. To do this, go to ramplogin.com and create an account or enter your existing account credentials here. After creating or entering your credentials, go underneath of the Website Admin tab and enter your unique login and password for your new website. You can have multiple website access points underneath of your account if you administer multiple RAMP websites or products. After entering your credentials, you'll be able to scroll down and hit the green login button for the website you have access to. For more information on creating an account or adding access to a product, please refer to the tutorial video in the description of this video. After signing in with your admin credentials, you'll be taken to the dashboard. Here, there is quick setting access and information about your website. However, all of these controls can also be accessed from the left-hand menu. We're going to go through the initial setup functionality and tools that you must be accessed to get your website up and running, starting with the Settings tab. Under Settings, we can access our website settings, where we have access to things such as the ability to change the master account password, adjust our local time, as well as add email addresses to any sort of default email fields. This is also where access to the assigning connection code is if you use the RAMP assigning system. This code allows you to connect your website to an assigning platform to have the game data be carried over to that assigning system. Additionally, this is where some of the default controls for things like Twitter and Facebook URLs are, as well as controls for certain leak functionality. After the settings page, we have access to our stats settings if this is a sport website. Under our stats settings is where we have controls to toggle on certain functionality, such as whether or not we use a 2-point or a 3-point system, controls for if we allow practices to be added to our website, what stats and standing settings we want to see, time after games that users can enter games results if we use the system to track game results, as well as other controls for things such as whether we track overtime, shootout loss, or certain settings for the Game Sheet app. After making changes on this page, you can go to the Save button to finalize those changes. Now that we've covered the settings and stat settings, we can move on to our locations. Here, we can filter by country, state, or province, and as well as arena, fields, diamonds, pools, and gyms to select the locations that you use for your organization. If a location is not in this list, please email support@rampinteractive.com and it will be created and tied to Google Maps. There's also a quick search on this page to allow you to easily find certain locations. To select a location, simply check it off of the list on the left-hand side. After our locations page, we have offenses. Depending on your sport, this offense page may appear differently. However, the base functionality of the page remains the same. You'll have controls to be able to set automatic suspension functionality, an add button that will allow you to create new offenses or cards, as well as a list of all existing offenses, their names, the potential to adjust their display order, potential to adjust their length if there's an associated length, as well as if they're a suspendable offense. Again, based on your sport, you may see a slightly different page with different controls dedicated to your sport. After offenses, we have access to setting our tiebreakers. Here, we can create tiebreakers, as well as different tiebreakers for each division by hitting the Add button. We can also have an All option, which applies to every division in the system. And then once that is active, being able to set what the tiebreakers are for that division. And when we hit the Add button, we can select which tiebreaker option we want to have appear, as well as the order in which these will be applied with the Display Order button on the right. After tiebreakers, we have administrators. Here we can create additional user admins who can have access to certain portions of the system by hitting the Add button, entering credentials, and then checking off what access you would like to have for this individual. Please see the tutorial video for user admins for more details on this functionality. Now that we've gotten through the basic settings, we can move on to building out our structure. The structure of a ramp website is based on a multitude of factors under the Seasons tab. The first one is Seasons. Seasons is the primary archiving function of your website. Teams, games, and events all fall underneath of a season. When that season is finished, it can be archived and the stats and standings will be removed from the website but not deleted, and you're able to create a new season that will have any new data for the upcoming year. To do this, hit the Add button and enter the name, potentially in English and French, of your new season. You can also edit a season by clicking on it here. The current season is a season that will appear by default on the front end of the website when someone views your website. Once you've created your season, you can create your game types if you have games on your website. Games and their results are sorted by game type. This allows you to have standings and stats based on each game type. Most common game types used by organizations are something like exhibition, regular season, and playoff. To create a new game type, hit the Add button and enter the name of the game type. When games are added to the system, they must have a game type associated to them, which corresponds to one of the ones listed here. After game types, we have categories and divisions. Depending on your website setup, you may not have access to the categories menu. The categories menu adds an additional layer of separation when viewing your teams. For large leagues, they may have something like U15, and then under U15 have divisions for U15 Tier 1, U15 Tier 2, and so on and so forth. For smaller organizations or leagues where they don't have as many divisions, they may only have a U15, a U18, a U21, and that can be handled with the Divisions tab. If you need additional functionality such as the categories menu, please reach out to sales@rampinteractive.com or support@rampinteractive.com, who can assist you with getting that change made to your website. To create a category, on the categories page, hit the Add button, enter a name, and hit Save. Additionally, underneath of the category, you can see what divisions are currently tied to it. And even jump into those divisions, or add new divisions from the categories page. You can also access these divisions directly from the Divisions tab by clicking on it on the left-hand side. Divisions work similarly to the categories, however have additional controls for things such as point overrides, as well as controls to set different game types as a default when viewing a website, in the case that you have a division that may have entered playoffs or have some sort of special event. You can set that to display as the default games and standings for that division without changing it for all divisions on the website, as well as controls to change specific access inside of this division, such as restricting the ability for teams to add or edit rosters, whether or not they can create content pages, whether rosters are locked and game results appear, if notifications are sent for AP players, as well as game sheet app controls for different pieces of functionality. For more details on these controls, view the tutorial for divisions and the game sheet app. These controls underneath of the division allow you to specialize each division as needed if you don't have the same set of rules applied for all age categories or programs you run. Additionally, from this divisions page, we can see any subdivisions that you may be using, as well as any teams under the divisions. Subdivisions, which are the next menu, allow you to sort teams into different, most commonly, pools. Whether that be a pool A and a pool B, an east or west, this will allow these teams to show up on the same page, but their stats and standings will be broken into their subdivision. So when viewing a team inside of a subdivision, you will see them grouped with the other teams in their subdivisions separate from the teams in the other subdivision or subdivisions. Now that we have our season, game types, categories, divisions, subdivisions created, we can move on to creating our teams. Now there are two ways to do this. Under the Teams tab and Teams on the left-hand side, you can manually create teams here, or you can go underneath of the Imports tab and import your teams onto the website using the importer. We'll get back to this importer in a second, but once we've created these teams via one method or the other, we'll be able to see what that looks like on the front end. On the front end of the system, having created your categories, divisions, subdivisions, and teams, you'll be able to go underneath of the Divisions tab in the left-hand corner, which will display your categories first, if you have those, your divisions listed underneath the categories, and then the teams listed underneath of those divisions. If we click into something like standings, we'll also be able to see if any teams have been sorted into separate subdivisions, which will be reflected on the standings page. Not all of these options have to be used in conjunction. You don't have to use subdivisions. Your site may not have categories, but building out that structure, that is how it'll then be reflected on the front end of your system. Now that we've covered how to build out the base structure, we can discuss getting players, staff, and other items into the system. Most common way to do this is via either the Regync or the Imports tab. We'll start with the Imports tab. Under Imports, we can choose a type of import, and then choose from the options listed here to import that data. For example, teams. We can then choose whether we want to import or mass update items underneath of this. In this case, we're going to do a new import, in which case it'll give us a list of items in the CSV that need to be created, as well as an option to download the template for this import. Once you've downloaded and completed that template, you'll be able to go to the upload page and upload that file. If the template you upload does not match or is missing fields, you'll be able to do matching for that import down below. There's a dedicated video for imports that you can watch that goes through each type of import in more detail and how to fill out those files. Having said that, the format and the layout is the same for the other imports. However, the columns will change based on what you select. So for example, if you import players, you'll have different fields that can be filled out and uploaded into the system. Lastly, when importing in games, such as league games, you'll have the additional option to do a update. A update allows you to pull a spreadsheet from the system via the template page, update the games in that spreadsheet, and then import it, making changes to the games that you edited. Again, a more detailed tutorial goes through this in more detail, but it allows you to mass update your games via a spreadsheet. The other way to add players and teams to your Ramp Interactive website is to use the Regync. The Regync can be used if you collect registrations via the Ramp Registrations platform. If you do so, you'll be able to collect a registration code from the registration platform, and underneath of Imports, go to Regyncs, and add that code here. Adding the Regync code will allow you to pull teams from that registration system to this website for the purposes of matching or creating new teams. To do this, hit the Add button and enter your code here. Once you have added a Regync code to your system, You'll be able to go underneath of that and be able to add or edit teams that have been synced. To add a team, hit the Add Team button, at which point you'll be able to filter by information from your registration system, such as a season and division, to view the teams in that season and division. You then have the option to pull teams down to teams that have been created in your website. Or alternatively, if you select a division, you'll be able to add them as a new team inside one of those divisions. The benefit of this is that if any changes are made to that team in the registration platform, they will automatically be reflected in the team on the website. Additionally, the players and staff already associated to that team in the registration system will be pulled down to your website. After teams have been synced via the Regync, you can always review those teams with the Edit Teams button, where you can see any syncs that have been done and toggle off the live sync if needed, as well as the option to control settings in the live sync, whether or not certain information is pulled down by the sync after the initial pull down, such as jersey number changes, updates to position, or if athletes should be removed from teams if they're pulled off the team in the registration platform. You also have an option to run the sync automatically for your organization via the Run button. If you need additional support with this, please refer to the more in-depth tutorial for the Regync or reach out to support at rampinteractive.com. Now that we have covered the basic setup of the system, we can get into managing your game data. To manage game data, we can go to the League Games page. These games would be either created via the import, or on the League Games page, can be added manually with the Add button. When viewing your League game data, you'll have your filter controls at the top of the page, as well as a quick search area where you can type in search criteria that will look at all upcoming game data and pull down information. For example, if you were just wanting to see a single team, you don't have to necessarily filter by that team, but could put in part of their name, and the page would refresh with matches of that string. Additionally, you can download the grid of games on this page, or manage games by checking off them on the left-hand side with the control to mass delete them, or controls on the right-hand side to cancel games, verify games as a league if you're required to verify the status of games, print game sheets, view the game sheet page, edit the game, and delete the game. When viewing a game sheet, you have access to update the score, put in information such as shots, penalty minutes, goals, penalties, goalies, and select rosters. If you're using the Game Sheet app or allowing teams to enter these results, they'll be able to do it via the team login, or you would see completed data inside of here that could be edited by you after the fact. All game data is editable by the league at any time. However, teams have a limited time based on settings you've put into the platform. In addition, underneath of league games, you have access to standings. Here you can see the standings of your teams, as well as their performance with some unique functionality Ramp has created to see how teams are currently performing. These are explained in more detail underneath of the drop-downs for competitiveness index and team placement rating. If you're using the Ramp Game Sheet app, you'll have access to all of the game sheet codes that can be viewed under the Game Sheet Codes tab, as well as the ability to see things such as schedule conflicts, where there are overlapping games, or practices at an existing location in your schedule. The Scheduler tool to create and generate schedules in the system by hitting the Add button and selecting teams, as well as game types, number of games, etc. This is a more advanced tool, which has its own tutorial dedicated to it. The brackets, where you can create brackets for things such as playoffs, which will automatically advance teams through the system. We've now covered basic setup, the creation of our system structure, the importing and adding of data, as well as the ability to view league games and to make changes under those league games. We're now going to move on to website content. Under website content, you'll be able to go in and manage all of your website structure. This is set up so you have a great deal of flexibility. The main two menus you'll be using are the menu and the content pages menu. This is where you're able to build out the structure of your site, as well as create content pages that will be displayed on your website. You also have the ability to use something called page templates, which we'll go to first. Page templates allow you to adjust the layout of menu items on your site and potentially have different menu items appear on different portions of your website. To use the page templates, go in and hit the Add button to create a new template. At the top of the page, you'll be able to give the template a name and then choose what this template will be used for. The home page will mean that you can use this template on the home page of your website, which means any components or content pages selected will display on the front of your website. Content means that when you create content pages, you'll be able to use this template with the created content pages. And again, you can create multiple templates if you want different layouts and controls on your site. This can also be done for category homepages and division homepages, again, by checking off the corresponding button and being able to use that template when you create a page of that type. The final type is a team page. If you allow teams to create content pages, you can again have templates that they can use for their page. If there is no template, it will just be the content page's content that appears on the page with no other pieces of functionality. In this case, we're going to give it a name, and we're going to check off what we want to appear on the home page. So we can go in here and say we want to have the featured news, a YouTube sizzle reel, featured content, carousel ads, and hat trick banners. Those options we've selected will now appear down here in this component area and can be rearranged in the order I want to have them appear in. I can also adjust the background to different colors for each of these components if I so desire. I can remove components with the delete button as needed. Having hit save, I now have that as a template listed inside of here, with the control to delete it or to copy it. There will always be a default for both the home page and for content pages. The content page one will have nothing selected. The home page one will have a ramp default with certain items enabled that you can replace by creating your own home page content. Once you've done that, you can also add information to the home page with this text field and enable the weather widget with the controls under the widget dropdown. Now that we've created a page template, we can move on to creating content pages. Under content pages, we can see any content pages that we've created to add or edit, and we can add new pages by hitting the add button. Here, we will see the header or name for the page and have the option to choose a template for this page. If we wanted to have something like a news rotator appearing on this page or sponsors appearing, we could choose a template that had those items selected. We also have an option here for meta tags if that's something you're looking to do. This helps with search engine optimization and for people to find your website. Lastly, we have access to the content area where you'll be able to put in information that would go on this page. If this was something like a sponsors page, I'd be able to put in the name of our sponsors, as well as details about them here, and also have options to put in links or upload files by using the file manager. For more details on using content pages, please refer to the tutorial video that covers content pages. We can finalize a new content page or editing a content page by hitting the Save button. After content pages, we have access to the menu. Via the menu, we can create new menu items and organize existing menu items. To create a menu item, hit the Add button and give it a title, as well as choose a type. Depending on the type you choose, it will have different effects on the options you will have. If you choose a drop-down menu, you'll be able to create submenus underneath of that menu. If you create a content page, you'll be able to choose a content page to tie to this menu item. You also have options in here to go to divisions, specific teams, files, URLs, custom forms, categories, or system-generated content. System-generated content is where you'd be able to create buttons for things like your homepage, or any menus that exist with additional functionality that has been created by RAMP, such as the albums page, FAQs, selected locations, master schedule, news articles, etc. So for example, if I wanted to have a news articles page, I could direct directly to the system-generated news articles page that would list out any news articles that you had created. And hitting Save would add that as a menu item. From here, you can also adjust the display order of these menus from left to right using the display order column. And if this is a drop-down menu, see any menus that have been created underneath of it. So we can see underneath of About Us, we can create a submenu by hitting the Add button and entering the details and controls the same way like we just did for the main menu. After those three main controls, you have access to a bunch of additional features on the left-hand side that have been created by Ramp Interactive that can be used by you that have additional formatting. What I mean by that is that we can create our executives, and this has pre-built formatting and will appear in a unique way on the website. To see that reflected, we can go back to the Ramp front end, go to About Us, and hit the executive board, and we can see our executives. You do not have to create this formatting, you just create the executives, and the system will generate it via the platform. Again, we can also see our menu structure is reflecting what we created in the back end. Back in the administrative side, to go through these menus quickly, we have access to the file manager where we can see what files have been uploaded, as well as upload new files if needed, including images. Create news articles under the News Articles tab, which can appear on our homepage. Create events that can be tied to teams, divisions, categories, or just generic. Quick links that again can appear on the front end of the site. Icon links, which can be tied to specific icons that can be used throughout your website. Featured content, which will appear on the homepage. Albums, FAQs, hat-trick banners, carousel ads, YouTube videos, category and division content pages, as well as division events and division staff and news articles if needed. For more details on these features, you can refer to the tutorial video that covers that specific feature. That covers the quick setup of your website. There are additional tools inside of here that you can use, such as the mail tool to mass mail out to individuals who have their email address saved in the system by going to the Compose page and filtering through those individuals via the pre-generated categories, as well as the ability to set up things such as the volunteer module or custom forms. For additional support on your website, please reach out to support@rampinteractive.com or 866-607-7267. Our support staff would also be happy to book additional training with you to go through features or requests that you may have. Thank you for listening to this quick setup tutorial video.